بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. يا ربنا زدنا علما وتقوى وبارك في أوقاتنا وفي أقوالنا وفي أفعالنا وسهل علينا العمل الصالح العمل الصالح وكن معنا في الطريق إليك وثبت أقدامنا ونصلي ونسلم على الذي أرسلته بالهدى ودين الحق. I wanted to focus on the topic of addressing our conditions. And a lot of times this whole idea is one in which is very theoretical to the point where it's not applicable. A lot of us are going through deep struggles, and a judgmental environment is not going to help us to be able to address our conditions. The reality is that the Sahaba radiallahu anhum ajmain, the disciples of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they experienced a lot of difficulties in their lives. I think that we forget that many of them had social issues, and many of them had moral failings, and many of them on occasion we see that they would come to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and admit that they had violated the values of Islam, and they will come seeking guidance. We even have a hadith which talk about this issue. We have a hadith which clearly talks about the point of a man who was a murderer, and he had murdered a number of different people, and he was seeking guidance. So if we look at that reality that Islam deals with the human being as is, doesn't cherry coat the reality of human life. In other words, we see that the Quran is coming down in an environment which is quite problematic for people to live in on multiple levels: economic levels, relationship levels, familial levels, on the issue of racial problems, on the issue of political oppression, all of those obstacles which human beings encounter in the world that stop their progress and their growth and their development. Islam came into that type of environment, and it was not impossible by any means for Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala to have revealed the Quran in an environment in which there was a lot of growth and material civilization, and people were, in familial situations which were stable, more just society. Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala could have revealed the Quran in Habasha, a place which the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam had indicated as being one which is governed by a just leader. But Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala revealed the Quran in an environment in which there was massive breakdown. And so a lot of times we see missing that we don't know how to address the Quran to our own proper situations, revelation. And we demand of each other a level of perfection that is unreasonable, given the fact that a lot of us are coming from brokenness, whether it's from the Muslim world, where they have generation upon generation, as of now, of people being Muslim. We see a level of perversity and brokenness which is problematic for people that have been in an environment in which Islam is supposed to be that which permeates, that which is widespread, that which is dominant. And so we have people also in environments in which the deen is not dominant. And so people are going to struggle as long as there's no environment that represents the values of Islam in a way which those values are dominant. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, he talked about the issue of the Quran has an exemplification, explication of the different types of selves, or I should say a modeling. So there's that self which encourages to evil, there's that self which is at peace, and there's that self which is warning you, is encouraging you to do good and is warning you about evil. And so there's that self which is just perverted and is just lost in evil. And so one of the things that Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah did was that he looked at that model of Quranic psychology, and he says that societies are like that. Of course, there's no society which is in a complete state of Islam, a complete state of peace, so on and so forth. But there's those societies which vary in their moral standing and in where people are at. So a lot of times I really don't know what we expect from people and so on and so forth. One of the biggest issues that we're facing now is the issue of the breakdown of interpersonal relationships. We are in a dilemma. And if I tell you the cases that came to me in Ramadan that I was exposed to, we are in a dilemma. And when I look at situations that people have, you look at family life, you look at your own personal struggles, you look at history, you look at people's situations, you see that it's very clear that there's a dilemma when it comes to family life, when it comes to brothers and sisters even finding each other for marriage, when it comes to knowing how to be married, when it comes to staying in the marriage. And so the reason why I bring that issue up is because you're talking about the core of community, the relationship between husband and wife. And so as long as that's the issue, that there's a dilemma between husband and wife, there's a dilemma of people finding each other, finding healthy spouses, you're going to find that there's going to be deficiency in having or creating a background in which people, or an environment in which people could practice the deen, and in which what's going on was influencing them as Islamic values. It's very difficult to practice the deen on your own or in small family units. It can be done, but it's always going to be something where you're going to find weakness. And it's very difficult to be in majority Muslims communities in which the deen is not properly practiced, because then you have a lot of contradictions. And there's no perfect situation. This is one of the reasons why struggle has been enjoined upon us. But, and I want to end on this note, if we keep having these unrealistic understandings of how to apply the deen, and we're like Xing the human being out in human struggle, we're going to continue to have serious issues. We're not addressing our problems properly. We're not addressing our issues properly. We think that we can just talk about the values of Islam or the principles of Islam or halal, haram, without taking into consideration the human condition. And then we expect a certain level of perfection from each other that is going to be impossible to attain to when people are dealing with generational struggles. And, one of the issues that we have to realize is that there has been a massive breakdown since the 60s, and it has increased in its problems in this society since the 80s, and in the post, public exposure to drugs, with all of the different phases that has taken place, and the loosening up of divorce laws, and the breakdown in the family structure. That's something that every community is beginning to suffer. No community is immune to this issue at this point. And so as long as you have people that have substance abuse issues, you have individualism, you have family breakdown, you have culture which is not supportive of the group, and you have a lot of choices. Some of them are self-destructive choices, and so on and so forth. And the environment is not one which supports real people's real development. You're going to have constant problems. And so we see that in the youth, we see that in the older people. So we need to be more realistic in how it is that we're dealing with the practice of the deen in its application, because we're hurting ourselves. We're hurting ourselves, and we act like we're not going to encounter real problems. And that's the issue. First of all, we have to admit we're in a dilemma. We're in a dilemma with the issue of community. We're in a dilemma with the issue of the family structure. We're in a dilemma with the issue of individualism. We're in the dilemma with the issue of the way that people are going through divorces and the issue of remarrying. We're in a dilemma when it comes to raising children. And I hate to say it because it sounds very negative, but unless we talk about being in the dilemma, we're not going to be able to move forward. Being in a dilemma doesn't mean that there's no positives and no strengths. That's not right. When I was working in social work, one of the most powerful tools that we had in any case that will come, no matter how drastic or problematic it was to identify the strengths that people have. There's always going to be some point of strength that a person has, no matter what their situation is, and you built off of that strength. And that's the type of mentality that we have to have. We have to be realistic with people's problems and identify them as they are. And then we look at their strengths and we kind of load on that part and try to build them from that part. But if we think that change, social change, and we think that personal change is just going to come with the issue of worship, it's just going to come with the issue of having the right aqeedah, we're mistaken. We're mistaken. The issue, if you look at Philadelphia as a place where people have knowledge of Tawheed, and look at the types of challenges that people have on an economic level, on a familial level, on an addiction level, and so there's no way you can't operate on that level. We see that the Quran, it came to address the issue of people having substance addictions in a gradual way, along with the issue of Tawheed. You know what I'm saying? And it showed the people, yeah, there's benefit in the whole issue of alcohol, right? But there's more harm than benefit, and so that's the logic of the Quran, to show people, yeah, these things that you may be engaged in, there may be benefit, and it may take you time to get out of it, right? But there you have to acknowledge that there's more harm in it. The more difficult thing is interpersonal relationships, because that gets very tricky when we're in toxic relationships and we're in problematic relationships. And the more saddening part about it is that when there's no willingness, and this is one of the qualities of the disciples of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they had a willingness to change. And they had a lot of issues, but that willingness to change is what made things easy for them, because they understood that there was problems, but they had that willingness. And that's something that we have to have. We can take an account of how much bad things people do on a regular basis and how much good we do, and critique and back and forth, or how much bad we do, but if there's no willingness, there's no intention to change, there's no willingness to change, there's no effort, it makes it very difficult to be able to move forward. And so those are some of the things that we have to look at: admitting, understanding what's going on, admitting that there's an issue, assessing where strengths are at, where weaknesses are at, and a willingness to address that stuff, and an understanding that it takes time, right? But those things have to be put in place. That's really the methodology of the early generation. If you look at it very closely, the Quran came gradually. The Quran assessed and addressed problems, right? And people were willing to change, and the Quran helped them to identify where there were strengths, where there was weaknesses, and they were working as a jama'ah, as a group. There was environmental changes. There were a lot of things that go into play. There were sacrifices that were made. There were a lot of things that go into play, which are necessary for us to duplicate in principle and in value. We're not going to be in a desert society, but there's certain values that were in place about personal change and social change, community change, and understanding how the deen works, that allowed them to be successful at dealing with their condition. And this is something that, even we see in this society, so on and so forth, when we go back and we look at people like Malcolm X and so on and so forth. This is something that he was doing practically. It was the issue of assessing what's going on and then trying to address it, and slowly addressing what Islamic values, but letting the people know there is a problem. How are you going to deal with this? But if we keep being delusional about what it is that we're experiencing and what it is that we're going through, or we keep just blaming ourselves only, or we don't take responsibility from ourselves. There's an issue where there's a collective problem, and there's an issue where there's an individual problem. We have to be able to assess both of those, the collective issues and the individual issues, where individual responsibility comes in at and where social change needs to take place. We have to look at those levels on a constant basis. But if you just tell people that it's all about their own personal success and their own personal change, that doesn't bring about any sort of environmental change, except at a very small level. That's something that everyone has to work on themselves. But sometimes you're going to find difficulty with yourself because you need a social change. You need a better environment. You need more economic opportunities. You need a better education. You need to be in an environment which is not so chaotic. So there's things that at the social level that have to be there for human growth, and there's things that have to be in place for the individual to grow and make choices. It's a dynamic between the two, and the religion is there to assist and guide us in that process. But what are you going to expect from people that are living